So everybody remembers the New York Times columnist Thomas Friedman's argument that the world is flat. So the argument I want to put forward today is not that the world isn't flat exactly, it's networked. And what's the difference, you're going to ask? Well, in a flat world, it wouldn't matter which standards we use to connect up with each other. We could take for granted, the idea of a level playing field takes for granted that there are already rules of the game that are established. But that's not so in globalization. We're in the process now of sorting out what the rules of the game will be for the billions of people who want to connect up with others in a new globalizing world. In a networked world, the question of which standards people use to coordinate their activities is enormously important, and it raises complicated issues. For example, the use of shared standards does enable us to participate in a new global economy and to do and experience lots of fantastic things. But on the other hand, to enjoy those benefits, you usually don't have any choice but to connect up using a certain specific set of standards. To accept, that is, the dominant standards of the day, whether it's to speak the English language or to use Microsoft Word, or if you already speak English, to learn to speak it better. A single person or a small group of individuals rarely has much power over the choice of which standard to use, at least once a particular convention has been established. So to return to the Grand Central Station example, it's not like anybody could decide individually to deviate from the common expectation that the clock in the middle of Grand Central Station is the place to meet. It's not like if I said, I went to the southwest corner of Central Park. Why weren't you waiting for me there? You can't do that as an individual, even if it's a large group of individuals. Once the convention is established, it has a certain kind of staying power. So this takes me to the key issue of the new form of power that I argue is at work in today's globalization, what I call network power. The idea of network power consists in the joining of two ideas. The first is that coordinating standards like languages or measurement systems or technical protocols are more valuable when more people use them. This is the idea that economists sometimes describe as network effects, or positive externalities, or economies of scale. These are all different ways of technically describing this feature of a convention being more valuable when more people use it. The second idea in the idea of network power is that this dynamic can lead to the progressive elimination of the alternatives over which otherwise free choice might be exercised. Or, to be brief about it, that there are many different possible rules of the game. But once one set of rules gets established, it can lock in as the convention of choice for some aspect of globalization and be very hard to change. So network power emerges with the new forms of social coordination that are made possible by global standards, and they're building off the compression of space and imagination that the technical advances that enable globalization have brought about. That social coordination via network power is really the highest form of globalization. To be able to go global in the technical sense, to take an airplane flight to another country, or to be able to teleconference internationally, that's just the beginning of globalization. The heart of globalization comes after technology has brought us together. And it's once we've already been hooked together by technical advances that the real game of globalization begins, which is the process of coordinating our social activities via new global standards. And as one of these shared standards gains prominence, it can edge out the others. And obviously the choice of which standard we use to coordinate a global world is enormously politically and socially consequential. So on this view, we should understand globalization as the rise of new transnational networks united by shared coordinating standards such as languages, technical protocols, measurement systems, legal regimes, and so on. These standards can spread when they're adopted for what I call extrinsic reasons, that's to say for the sake of the other people in the network, rather than for intrinsic reasons, which is to say for the inherent properties or qualities of that standard. So think about English again. People are adopting it not for any intrinsic qualities, but for the extrinsic qualities. And so while today's networked world of globalization is indeed an open world, in the sense that the standards that we use to connect with each other are open for people to adopt, it isn't simply for that reason a fair or just world. A networked world is not the same thing as a flat world. It's only possible to connect and collaborate with other people in a network if you choose to do things the same way they're already doing it. So while living in a globalizing world means that we can all access many more interesting things than we could if our commitments were exclusively local, we only get to access these things by using certain rules of the game that aren't easily changed, that don't always include everyone, and that aren't necessarily equally easy for everyone to learn to adopt.